Want to break down on some of the latest topics from college to the pros? We interview many individuals to share their knowledge about the news stories surrounding the teams and its players. This is Nothing But That Sports Talk. Welcome to Nothing But That Sports Talk. I'm Rafique Louison alongside Jeff Eisenband, who is an MSG insider and an NBA 2K League insider. Thank you for stopping by the show today.
No problem. Thanks for having me. We're trying to get this done, you know?
Yeah, we're trying to get this done after what has been an ecstatic NBA 2K League. It was about to be in its third season. Year one, you had Knicks came in, the only actual Knicks that won a championship, and T-Wolves came in, the only actual T-Wolves, and funny enough, both those teams stink in real life. But you know what? At least the video gaming virgin got it done. And as an NBA 2K guy, what I can ask you, what went through your mind seeing all these top picks in the draft?
Yeah, I mean, it was the biggest thing with the NBA 2K League draft this year, and this is the third one we've now seen. For those who don't quite understand the Pro-Am mode, it's 5-on-5, so every position is being controlled, and you need an elite point guard to perform at a high level, because that's the person who, you know, has the ball in their hands the most amount of time, and they're the ones dictating the offense. So we knew a lot of elite point guards were going to come off the board. And one thing interesting with the top three picks, you had JBM went first to Wizards District Gaming, then Duck went second to Knicks Gaming, and then the Kings were in this interesting spot where they picked 13. They picked 3, but they also picked 17. So we weren't sure if they were going to take a point guard or wait, and they actually decided to pick a guy named Crush, who's an elite defender, lockdown defender, two-way player, who is probably the best non-point guard in the draft. So they were able to do that and then get a point guard named Bash later in the draft. But for the most part, it was point guards across the board in that lottery.
Yeah, and as you can see when you play NBA 2K, well, I play NBA 2K. Like, whenever I'm at home, that's literally one of the days I play. Just to, well, not necessarily to eventually be in the NBA 2K League, but you know what? I could probably see myself hosting the NBA 2K League one day. But you know what? That's a conversation for later in life. But let's just get to it. Which player do you think is going to make a big impact in his team this season coming up in year 3?
Oh, man, I think that, you know, I talked about a lot of those guys, JBM Duck at the top, but I want to talk about a guy, Chalk, for Nets Gaming Crew, who was drafted, I believe, 9th. And he's a guy we're not even sure what position he's going to play. He was the first legend in NBA 2K20, so you know he's got that skill from a one-player mode. But he's played an elite defending role, he's played an elite scoring role as a wing, and he's also played an elite point guard role in his past in Pro-Am. So I think that he's a guy that we're just kind of unexpected, and you know, a lot of the questions were, well, is he really a pro player? Is he just an entertainer? He's an entertainer. He's got a big YouTube channel, Twitch presence, but we're going to see, I think, something special from Chalk this year.
Why wouldn't we? I mean, the Nets are actually putting in some work. I mean, well, last year I'm sure, I don't even know what happened, but you know what? I'm guaranteeing you Nets gaming crew is going to win a championship for the 2K League the same way Brooklyn is going to turn it around next year. But let's just transition to the Brooklyn Nets. Like, what are your thoughts on the Brooklyn Nets this season? I mean, they didn't have Kevin Durant all year. Kyrie Irving's out for the year with the injury. Do you think they can hold their own against 8 of the top 3 teams in the Eastern Conference? And what do you think is a more easier matchup?
Man, I mean, you know, with the Nets, we were always kind of, well, is this just a lost season? Did they sign Kevin Durant for the future? And, you know, this is just the cherry on top. Maybe Kyrie brings him to the playoffs. And I think it's been interesting because when Kyrie's been in, it's a different Nets team, for better or for worse. You know, sometimes we've seen Kyrie come out there and light it up, and he obviously brings a sort of dynamic play that no one else on the Nets can bring. But you just worry about what was left in Boston. You know, is that what he's bringing to the Nets now? It's still a lost season in my mind that the Nets are going to sneak into the playoffs because of, you know, they've gotten some good play out of guys like Dinwiddie, Joe Harris, you know, guys who've stepped up in Kyrie's absence. I guess of the teams that are, you know, if they can somehow play the Celtics and figure something out, that maybe the Celtics are a young team that could be exposed a little bit more so than the Raptors, but I just don't see the Nets getting out of the first round.
Yeah, it's going to be tough because we're going to sink to number 8 and get sandwiched by the Milwaukee Bucks, who are on pace for 70
then they
wins.
shouldn't even show up.
And they could either be number 7th and face either the defending champion Toronto Raptors, who they did beat in the first round twice. or the Boston Celtics, who have the most championships in the NBA franchise ever. And, a lot could happen. And speaking of the Milwaukee Bucks, do you think they can get to 70 wins?
So I've looked at this down. I mean, at one point I started to look when they had, I think, 6 losses about 2 weeks ago. I was thinking, why is no one talking about them maybe breaking the Warriors record? I mean, I guess they would have had the Warriors were 73-9. It would have been tight. And now as I'm looking at it, I mean, I'm looking. I got the standings pulled up right now. They're 50-8. I just think it's too tough to get to. I think not that they're going to let up a little bit, but I think it's hard when they're not going to set the record. And they're going to get they're going to clinch that first seed soon enough. So I think let's say they get to 67 or 68 wins. I think that's a pretty good season, but I just see 70 seems like a little bit if they had 1 or 2 less losses, but every loss matters if you're trying to get to 70 wins.
Yeah, because their only tough matchup going forward would be the Los Angeles Lakers, of course, and well, you gotta count all the other top elite teams going forward the last few months of the season. Well, they're going to defeat the Brooklyn Nets. They're going to defeat the bottom feeders in the Eastern Conference. Now it's all a matter if they can take out the top 8, because a lot of teams, they held their own against the Milwaukee Bucks. The Wizards held their own. The Raptors held their own. And it's no surprise because they took them out in the playoffs last year. But they only had to lose 4 more games in order to not hit the 70-win mark.
But you see the Wizards taking them to overtime. I'm not saying that's... that is a little fluky. Bradley Beal just is scoring at will right now. But to me, it's more about we'll see probably a couple guys sit out a few games down the stretch. You don't have to, be playing Giannis 40 minutes at the end of this season. You can rest up a little bit for the playoffs. Especially, we've seen it from LeBron a lot in the NBA. That first round should be a cakewalk for whoever the Bucks play. The Bucks aren't going to play a meaningful game again until potentially... the first week of May or so.
Being the second round. Because the second round, you might get either the Miami Heat or the Philadelphia 76ers, because they're duking it out for home court advantage in the first round of a potential playoff series between the two. And Milwaukee, at the season today, they get the Orlando Magic, and we all saw what happened. Even after DJ Augustine hit the game-winning shot, they lost 4 straight.
They did. The Magic were able to steal that first game of the playoffs last year, but I think and even if the Bucks play, that second round, I think it's more like Giannis has to actually work a sweat off. It's really going to come down to that Eastern Conference Finals matchup that's probably going to be against Toronto or Boston.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're also going to get to June where you get to the NBA Finals, which leads to this question. Do you think we're going to see the Bucks and Lakers in the NBA Finals?
Yeah, I don't think it's a hot take to say that. That's how I feel. I think the Bucks are higher above the rest of the Eastern Conference than the Lakers are in the Western Conference. I think that you're going to see some of these teams, like a lot of people are saying negative things right now about the Clippers and Rockets, but I think either of those teams, because it just matters about getting hot in the playoffs, and especially the Rockets. We've seen a couple times, I know Russell Westbrook weren't on those Rockets teams, but we've seen the Rockets just when it comes playoff time, get hot. And then on the Clippers side, Kawhi Leonard just won a championship, and he didn't even have Paul George. I know Paul George's health has been off and on, but if you can get a healthy Paul George, a healthy Kawhi Leonard, and the rest of that team, which is deep and battle-tested, either of those teams could beat the Lakers.
Yeah, exactly. Especially we could be seeing a playoff series between Lakers and Clippers for the very first time. The Clippers have not gone the second round. Denver has not gone past the conference finals in forever how long, and the rest of the team, including the Houston Rockets, They did go as far as the Western Conference Finals, but we all know what happened from there. You guys will listen to the last few episodes where you see how overrated they are for losing against the Golden State Warriors about 4 or 5 times. It's just incredible. Now, which of the Eastern Conference playoff series are you looking forward to seeing the most?
Are we talking first round or just in general?
First round.
I think that the team that's really gonna matter are the 76ers. So right now, I'm looking, the 76ers would play the Heat in the first round, and either way, the reason I just say it because we know how the potential of the Philadelphia 76ers. We know the big names that they have. The chemistry has not been there this season, and yet they're still going to be a playoff team. They're still going to be the 4 or 5 seed. So for me, I just really want to see, because remember, if you go back to the start of the season, people would have said that the 76ers were probably the Bucks' biggest threat. So we're going to see if they can get that together, and if Joel Embiid is at that point where he can just take over playoff games, because sometimes that's all you need. So, it looks like it'll probably be the Heat that they would play. I don't know if I want to call the Heat a vulnerable team, but they've been, surprising this season and had a great first quarter of the season. But I still think that's where we're going to see one of those teams. Especially, I just need to see what the 76ers have in the playoffs to see if they could, cause the Milwaukee Bucks trouble in that second round.
Yeah, but don't forget about the sleeper team, the Indiana Pacers. They proved that even without Victor Oladipo, they can rack up wins.
It's important to see teams like the Pacers and the Raptors. I don't want to call them necessarily system teams, but you've got coaches who create sort of, I guess, a formula that works. The fact that the Rockets have done all that they've done this year without Kawhi Leonard has been pretty impressive, just basically picking up where they were a year ago.
Yeah, it's going to be a long ride to the end of the season. Now, who is your rookie of the year between Ja Morant and Zion Williamson? Because people are saying that even though Zion Williamson missed like half the season because of injury, he could still be MVP. And could you blame him? Zion Williamson is just nuts.
I think and it's interesting because the Grizzlies, I believe, are in the 8th spot right now. I think that we're starting to see if one of those guys can get their team into the playoffs, then they deserve the Rookie of the Year. If the Pelicans make the playoffs, basically because Zion Williamson came in halfway through the year, and if you remember, the Pelicans started, I think, 0-5. Like, the fact that the Pelicans have made such a comeback this season has been incredible. Right now, it is Ja Morant for me because he's played more, he's been more dynamic, he's added something. Sometimes with rookies, you got to look at win total on how they change things. And I understand the Pelicans are a different team from Anthony Davis to now, but I mean, the fact that you put Ja Morant in basically the same Grizzlies lineup and he's done what he's done with that team, I think he has the inner track, but Zion, I mean, what? Is it just going to be 25 games the whole way here on out? We're going to have to start to pay attention.
Yeah, you had to. I know you were paying attention to Zion Williamson when he had the game against the San Antonio Spurs when he debuted. And it's sad that he had to get benched because he was on limited minutes restriction. But you know what? I would have played him the rest of the fourth quarter. He was just bananas with those 3-point shots he made in the fourth.
It was incredible. And he made a 3-pointer the other night, right? His first one since that first game. And that's where you really, I think Zion made 4 threes in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, wait a second, this guy can shoot threes too? Like, that was not something that we saw at Duke. That wasn't something we were necessarily ready for. But, I think we'll look back kind of similar to Luka last year. That I know Luka was the Rookie of the Year. The Mavs weren't really in contention. It was just you watch the Mavs to get excited about Luka. I think Zion and Brandon Ingram have that Pelicans team ready to be in the playoffs next year.
Yeah, and which leads to this question. Do you think they can get 1, 2, or 3 games for the Los Angeles Lakers? Maybe not take them out. We know the Lakers are going to be in the finals, but do you think in a series they can hold their own against the Lakers? Because yesterday they proved they can hold their own in the game.
Yeah, I'm going to say no. And I'm going to say that it's just a different animal, LeBron James in the playoffs. And I don't think he's messing around with any games, especially when you're a guy like LeBron and you're trying to play as limited amount of games as possible. We've seen the last couple of years the Warriors sometimes lose a first-round game to someone. It just kind of, when LeBron was with the Cavs, it would happen from time to time, and the Heat. But it's just, I think there's that zero dark 30 LeBron in the playoffs. He's not wasting any time losing a game in New Orleans. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it really isn't because it's LeBron James, without question.
With Anthony Davis.
Yeah, Anthony Davis too. I mean, to be fair, if it wasn't without Anthony Davis last year, they did miss the playoffs. But you know what? They would have been playoff loaded if it wasn't for those injuries last year.
With, by the way, basically the Pelicans roster, right? Was the team that they were running.
Ah, man. But on to that. What inspires you to get into sports journalism?
I always go back that I was just the type of kid that grew up on sports. That everything, my family got me into sports, and I'm just someone, I'm a little obsessive, so it was, you're playing Little League when you're 7 years old, and I'm like, well, I'm going to be the best Little League player possible. Like, that's how I looked at things. I'm using baseball as an example, but I saw someone posted recently these dry erase boards that there used to be around in the late '90s, early 2000s. Like I had this board that I used to change the standings and the box score every day of. Like I would read the newspaper when I was young to read all the box scores about everything because this was pre-internet, pre-NBA League Pass or anything like that. With basketball, it was I just liked looking the next morning and seeing what how the standings had changed, who scored how many points, and understanding that. And as I got older, it was something that I got into high school, calling my high school's varsity sports. Went to college at Northwestern to study journalism, and it was always it was what interested me. I tried to maybe write about politics or news, and I was like, I don't. I love the randomness of sports. I love the fact that we're talking about this right now, and a team that we might not even be talking about might win the NBA Finals. And to me, that's an incredible story that you just don't get in other fields. So it's been something that I've just always been infatuated with is sports, and now esports has that same sort of competitive edge to it. And what I've loved about my coverage of esports is that a lot of these stories haven't been tapped into. You meet someone and you find out about their life, and sometimes in the NBA level, guys are covered in college and AAU, and by the time they get to the NBA, you know everything about them. They have a Wikipedia page already. For me, these NBA 2K League players, it's the first time anyone's telling their story, and I take a lot of pride in being able to do that.
That's very nice. I know that's a lot to take in, but you know what? There's just one question that needs to be asked. Like, somebody told you that the sports journalism field is very tough, and they usually hire people that are former basketball players or football players or baseball players. Would you continue trying to do journalism today, or would you switch to a different field?
No, I think that what you get, a lot of the analysts, right, are going to be former players. And if you sit on your couch and think about it, who are you going to listen to? Someone like Charles Barkley, who's actually been out there and been in the trenches and spent a lot of time in the NBA versus someone that didn't. But that's where you see a lot of the reason you see hosts, play-by-play people, individuals, insiders, people that are on that more journalistic side. They're more trained. They study the field, and it's about communicating information and communicating stories, and not necessarily being the analysis of what's going on before you, but how do you report and kind of be the person that's giving all the, like I said, the information to people. So, and I also always say to people, a lot of individuals like to complain. This person's getting this job because of this person's. These basketball players aren't professional who are analysts, or football players aren't professional who are analysts. But there are certain things. Don't complain. Don't fight. Do the best work you can possible, and the cards will shake out as long as you're working your tail off and putting yourself in the right rooms and trying to inch your way forward. And the other thing that I tell people is, you're not gonna become a superstar celebrity hosting a primetime sports show overnight. You have to think about it. How old are you? 23, 24?
I'm actually 28. My bad.
28. Okay, 28. But it's about the inching forward. Like, where's like the next step that you can take to get yourself on the next ring, the next rung, as opposed to trying to be like, I'm gonna get on NBA on TNT tomorrow night.
Well, the next step would be try to get as much training as you can when you're in college, and when you're done with college, if you feel you haven't learned enough in college, do podcasts on your own, like how William Trabucci was doing. Like how William Trabucci and the guys doing Real Fan Real Talk and everybody else, they're doing their own show. They're creating their own platform to work their way towards being where you're sitting right now.
Yeah, no, it's no one's gonna listen. No one owes you anything. No one's gonna hand you anything. You gotta try to differentiate yourself and put it out there. And like you said, you have to learn. This isn't. I think that there's a great. I always kind of love using it to pump me up. But there's a scene in Miracle, right, where he's. If you've seen the movie Miracle, where Herb Brooks is making them skate back and forth, and he says you think you have enough talent to win on talent alone. He says, like, you don't have enough talent to win on talent alone. And I think that people always have to realize that you can't just sit up there and not prepare or anything like that. You have to do your research, learn about your craft, and do the best job possible that way.
Yeah, that's all it takes. I mean, you just got to keep on working hard. And, well, when I was in LIU undergrad, I felt like I haven't learned enough when I was going to college there. So I went to Fordham grad, and after Fordham grad, I kind of learned a bit more than what I didn't learn when I was an undergrad at LIU because they had WFUV, and I'm sure you probably know about WFUV Public Radio and BronxNet and all that stuff. But you just do some research on it. But yeah, it takes a lot of training, and you just gotta go to the right college, like how you went to the right college. Like, what are the trainings that you take when you was in college? Like, how was campus media like for you?
Well, let me just say WFUV for people that don't know. I mean, Fordham is able to get their students, undergrad and grad, anyone that wants to be a part of WFUV sports, into the biggest sporting events in New York. And that's not just, Yankees, Knicks, Rangers, Islanders, Giants, Jets, all that stuff. I mean, we're talking about the NBA draft, the NFL, if the NFL draft is here, whatever events, the U.S. Open, any events that are going on in New York, I think it's pretty incredible what they do. For me, I wanted to go to a school where I could be in a great journalism. I wanted to go to a great journalism school that also had great college sports to cover, as in at the Division I level. And Northwestern attracted me because it's Big Ten. So we always joke about when we were there that it almost felt we were such a smaller school than Michigan and Ohio State and these places. I went to Notre Dame at one point, but we were able to travel to these big schools and cover sports, college sports at that elite level. Right next guys at ESPN, guys from wherever are standing right there. And for me, it was also, I think the biggest experience I got out of Northwestern was we had some amazing speakers that came in. My freshman year, I remember Michael Wilbon coming and being able to listen to him, Rachel Nichols, Jay Donde, Mike Greenberg, and a lot of these alums were able to come back and just being able to kind of be one-on-one. I got to shout out my guy Steve Weissman, who's on Tennis Channel and NFL Network, and he was a guy who had been at the radio station, and we still text and go back and forth, and he still gives me advice to this day, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I kind of had that same feeling back when I was a Fordham grad. I got visits from Ryan Bruco, play-by-play guy. I got visits from Michael Watts. He does play-by-play for the Cincinnati Bengals preseason team. I even interviewed Jack Curry, who's a Yankee analyst, for a video documentary I did about the Public Radio. You should check it out. It's on my YouTube channel and get feedback and all that stuff. But yeah, it's just a lot that I've done when I was at Fordham University. I even got to do a March Madness podcast while me and a few other students, we discussed the March Madness tournament last year in 2019. And, that's another thing. The links are actually on my LinkedIn account. If you want, feel free to listen to it anytime. Give your thoughts. And, if anything, I'll just keep on progressing as we come to the end of Nothing But That Sports Talk. Thank you for tuning in. And for those of you that don't know, you can listen to it on Spotify, iTunes. Well, you might not hear it, but because it's just not there. Or you can just watch it on YouTube. And for all the big balls out there, get your head in the game.